Good morning. Thank you for coming. My name is Robert Yang. I'm the Sales Vice President for Asia Pacific for Seagate. So today I want to share with you a survey that we have conducted 8 months back. It's specifically focused on artificial intelligence. So in this survey, it's going to be, we've done it over 6 different markets. But in this report, we're specifically focusing in Korea. So we'll share with you some of the gaps, the challenges, what we found in the survey. So before we begin to talk about the artificial intelligence, we got to think about how data was started. Looking at the next 8 years, right? We believe that the explosion of data is going to be tremendous. The growth of data we're looking at with the IDC report that we've done, 163 zettabytes of information will be created in the next 8 years. So if you were wondering, what is a zettabyte? Because you obviously heard the term terabytes, right? So let me give you some example what terabyte representing the zettabyte. So as if you were to go into your today's IT shop, you can probably pick up a hard drive that's with 1 terabyte, right? So 1 zettabyte is equivalent of 1 billion of terabytes, 1 billion. So think about 163 zettabytes, looking at the next 8 years. So think about it. Everything today that you have from your mobile phones, cameras, video recording machines, right, to your laptops, everything's digitized. We're really living in a digital world. So data is growing. How is data going to be stored is also changing. So let me, before I dig into the new storage framework, which is the core edge and endpoints, let me take you back to maybe 30 years ago, how the data was formed, right? So you think about the architecture of 30 years ago, where you have the mainframes, right? Big IBM computers where everyone connected to the mainframe with the terminals. And then we move on to the stage where the client servers, right? Where we wanted to distribute the power by having workstations and servers in place. And that time, internet wasn't really existed yet. You heard the term local area network, where just companies just connecting with their own machines. So let me move from that to today's world. So the internet has happened, the explosion, the data, mobile phones, tablets, right? Everything's connected to the cloud. This is what we're happening today. So what we're looking at, the next stage, right? If you were to look at what is an endpoint? Well, think of an endpoint will be something of some sort of device that's creating data, or something that's connected to the internet. It could be your camera, it could be your recording device, it could be your mobile phone, it could be anything, right? Like generating the raw data. As the data being created and generated, you passing that information down to the core. The core, what we describe, will be the cloud, where the data centers, where the hyperscale and then multi-tiering storage systems being stored these data. But as we've seen this phenomenon changing, there's a device called the edge required to exist. Why is that so? Because as these data being created, it needs to be processed and analyzed in a very fast pace. And can you imagine, give you a concrete example, autonomous vehicle, self-driving drive car. The car is driving down the road, and as a sensor, picking up someone running across the street. And if you have to pass that information back to the cloud and then make that decision, that would be too slow and too late. So you need a device in the middle, in between, we would call it the edge, be able to process that information and make that decision much, much faster. And this is where we see the changes with the new storage platform where the edge is forming. So I talked about the growth of data, and I talked about how the data is being stored. Now let's talk about the artificial intelligence, the AI. This is the new technology we identified it's going to be a game changer, we believe, right? So what is AI, right? AI's ability of machine learning to make a decision without human intervention, right? In a way, data is the fuel that provides that information to the machine to make that intelligence. So one of the ways that machines be able to make, to articulate, or be able to extract all this information to learn is we call it data tagging, right? Data has to be tagged. And that's a very important aspect of the technology. After all, everything we have to be able to identify, be able to sort by tagging these data so the machine be able to sort and analyze and put it into a context to create some value. But we are still in the early stage about data tagging, right? To understand how to set up a standard for all that. So I think one of the things that we are seeing is that by end of 2025, about 15% of these global data, the data we call the data sphere, will be tagged, right? And only 1/5 of that will actually be analyzed. So 2018, I think it's going to be an amazing year for Asia Pacific in the AI arena. We believe that why this is so important in APAC? Well, because I think for three things. One is the rapid growth of the Internet of Things. As we see devices, sensors, and objects are being connected to the Internet, we're pushing this information to allow the machine to have machine intelligence, to become much smarter. You've seen a lot of the countries are putting up initiatives like smart cities, putting sensors around the cities to be able to make the city much safer in terms of either the congestions or safety, right? Cloud computing are become more powerful and more affordable, right? And of course, the breakthrough of the algorithm of machine learning is also become a lot more moving forward. I mean, just to give you an example, if you hear the machine has learned to be able to beat, a top chess player or a Go player now because of the fact that be able to learn, be able to see the move much more ahead than human can. So we've seen that organizations across the world are getting more funding for AI, and especially Korea is looking to spend about $2 billion by 2020 in R&D just for AI. And Seagate is very excited to be part of this overall ecosystem. So let me dive in now and talk about the survey that we have done. As I said, this is a survey that we did conduct over 6 markets. And really, what we see is that AI, APAC is really in a unique position. Why is that so? Because of the large and growing economies that we have in APAC, the fast talent of pools that focus on developing the AI applications, and of course the highly connected populations. More than close to 50% of the population of APAC represent the world. So the amount of data has been gathering. It's going to be able to embrace the opportunity and helping the organizations to enhance their productivities and performance and operations. So let me kind of talk about the profiles, right? So we did this study with 6 major markets. That's Australia, China, India, South Korea, and Taiwan. And of each of these markets, each of these countries, we have over 100 companies in each of these countries, and they're ranging anything from a small, medium-sized company to a large-sized company. And of course, the people that we focus on are the project managers, department managers, senior managers, and C-levels. And We did this across all industry, not just a particular one, but across the ICT, manufacturing, financial, and retail sectors. So let's talk about Korea. So what we found? Well, vast majority of the organization has already implemented AI. That's according to 60% of that survey, right? 60% of that people already has some form of implementation of AI. How's that comparison compared to the APAC, the other 6 market? Well, the other market roughly about 74%, but it's still 60% is very relatively a high percentage. Out of that 60%, where is the areas people are really putting the AI focus? Well, the top 3 are no surprise there. The IT departments, right? Supply chain, obviously using the AI technology to be able to help maybe navigate their goods flow and to be able to make that intelligence decisions. R&D, no surprises there that, as I mentioned, there's a lot of talent pool in APAC. People Korea are putting a lot of, R&D, people putting their focus on developing AI applications to help their own customers and also helping their own internal infrastructures. So what else? Well, in the next 12 months, 81% of the organization in Korea are planned to implement AI in their organizations, right? 81%, very high. In terms of drive productivity, 97% of the respondents believe that AI will drive productivity and performance, 97%. That's extremely high. In terms of the timing of impact, so within the 3 years, 62% of the respondents believe that AI's will become more apparent within the 3 years. This percentage is a little bit low, but there's no surprise for that. My view is that, there's a lot of challenge to understand what are the applications going to be out there to help them to make that, to realize that return on investments. So that percentage of being 62% to me is pretty realistic, is what we think that where it should be. So 92%, right, in terms of adoption, believe that, we don't implement AI, their organization, will not be relevant. So they need to, in order for them to stay relevant, 92% of the people believe that they need to adopt AI. Right, so that's a pretty interesting finding that we found. As I mentioned, 86% of the people that we found are struggling to be able to implement AI. And why is that so? Well, I think the challenges are really no surprise. There are 3 things. One is the IT infrastructure, which I'll go to the next slide to go in more detail. Second is the strategy. We more and more, as we talk to organizations, they're starting to form a new role in the organization with someone just managing the data. We call it the data officer, chief data officer, CDO, right? Someone can be able to come up with a strategy, understand the flow of data, how it's going within the organization, and also, as the data is also has a very strong, has information about privacy and security, and this data officer will also set the strategy for that. Budget, no surprise there. Need money to be able to implement the AI areas, right? So let me go back to the IT infrastructure, which was the #1 list on the challenges. So if you look at the IT infrastructures, you look at really 4 areas: the software applications, computing hardware, network equipment, lastly the data center storage. It could be what type of application you're running, and it could be the data that gets flow back, does it have enough processing power to be able to process the data, And do you have enough the network to be able to handle the flow of the traffic, right? And the last thing, obviously, is about the storage of the data. This is where Seagate comes in. So 95% of the respondents indicate that it needs to invest IT infrastructure to handle increasing streams of data from AI implementation. And 97, right, indicates that they need more data storage solutions to help increase the AI implementation. So I think for Seagate, so we always look at this AI is going to be the next big thing, right? It's going to be growing in the future. And as an equal player, as a starting point where the data is being stored, this is the area we'll continue to invest in, looking at it and how we be able to help our customers to maximize the value of their data. So artificial is in, and I think we believe that this could be the next big thing next to internet. We're going to continue, right? And I think we just want to think about the AI a little bit more. I always watch movies, sci-fi movies, and think about, hey, all this stuff that's happening in the movies, is this going to be reality? Think about those 5-6 years ago movie that you've seen. Most of the stuff that you've seen already become reality. And a lot of the things that you've seen today in these movies are really reference to AI. So for us, we'll continue to evolve with the digital transformation to enable our customers to grow, expanding their frontier in space of AI. I think the livelihood of AI is really coming from the data. Data has to be agile and flexible and secure and operating in a very optimized environment. So with that, I want to thank you for your attention and thank you for your time.